of the written testimony you may have that we didn't get a chance to hear today. It's extremely important to hear from you. So thank you, the three of you, for being here. And with that, what we're going to do is take a break from testimony on this bill. Senator Leas has come in, and to honor time, I know on his busy calendar, I am going to ask Allison to please come up and to brief Senate Bill 5599, supporting youth and young adults seeking protected health care services. Allison.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Allison Mendiola, committee staff. Before you, as you mentioned, is Senate Bill 5599, sponsored by Senator Leas, who's here with us today. The bill before you is about supporting youth and young adults seeking protected health care services, which is defined as gender-affirming care and reproductive health services that are lawful in Washington in 3 ways. First, as to shelters. If any person, unlicensed shelter, or runaway and homeless youth program knows that a minor is away from home without permission, they are required to promptly report the location of the minor to the parent, law enforcement, or DCYF. And under this bill, they do not need to contact the parent if a compelling reason exists, which includes but is not limited to notifying the parent will subject the minor to child abuse and neglect, or the minor is seeking protected health care services. As to licensed overnight youth shelters or those helping runaway and homeless youth, if they know a minor is away from home without permission, they're to contact the parents within 72 hours, preferably 24. Under this bill, if there are compelling reasons to not contact the parent, which is expanded to include youth seeking protected health care services, they are instead to contact DCYF. Secondly, this bill addresses host home programs, which are tax-exempt organizations for youth not in the care of or receiving services from DCYF. Currently, they are to obtain parental permission to participate in the program, and that is updated every 6 months. Under this bill, host homes do not need parental consent if there's a compelling reason not to contact the parent or guardian, which is that the youth is seeking protected health care services. And then lastly, $7.5 million is appropriated to the Office of Homeless Youth Prevention and Protection Programs to provide access to supportive care grants to organizations to address the needs of youth and young adults seeking protected health care services. And the bill lists a number of ways that those grants can be used. It's not a definitive list. And the definition of gender-affirming care and reproductive health care services can be found in your bill report. A fiscal note is requested and has not yet been received. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Members of the committee have any questions? I have a few, so hopefully you can help me out. My question one is, does anything in this bill change existing Washington law on parental consent or reproductive or gender-affirming care?
No, this addresses youth and basically shelter.
So sheltered youth, it's around their sheltering. And does anything in this bill suspend mandatory reporting requirements when abuse or neglect is suspected?
No, and there's no exception in statute for mandated reporters.
And then one last one, if a parent's not notified due to compelling reasons under the bill, is DCYF notified instead?
Yes.
So if DCYF is the parent, if you will, the parent, is it in loco or whatever, parental, whatever they
Yes.
are notified?
Right.
Versus
That applies to dependent children, but under this bill, you have to contact someone. So in that case, it would be DCYF.
Okay, so thank you very much. Any questions? Thanks so much. Hearing none. Senator Leas, please come join us and talk a bit about your bill.
Thank you, Chair Wilson, members of the committee. For the record, Marco Leas, State Senator from the 21st District. Ensuring that our young people in Washington get appropriate access to health care is important to all of our youth, but in particular to our transgender youth. Major medical associations, including the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Family Physicians, the Endocrine Society, the American Psychological Association, and others have made statements in support of expanded access to gender-affirming care for our trans youth. And here in Washington, we've passed a number of policies over the last couple of years to ensure that all Washingtonians get access to gender-affirming care. We know, according to the Trevor Project, that 1.8% of youth identify as transgender. That equals about 30,000 young people in our state. We know that when young people don't have access to gender-affirming care, it leads to lifelong challenges in terms of mental health and complications from that disconnect between who you are inside and who you are on the outside, the lack of support for that identity. We know that 1 in 3 transgender youth report attempting suicide, and rates of depression are significantly higher for this population than for their cisgendered peers. We also know from a 2016 study published in LGBT Health that trans youth who are at risk of suicide or substance abuse goes up as they face family rejection. And we want all parents and all families in Washington to encourage and to enable their trans children to achieve every measure of success. Unfortunately, the data shows that not every family is ready to provide that support and assistance, and that's where this piece of legislation comes in. If there is a trans youth in Washington who is trying to seek these essential healthcare services that are vital to their long-term success and to the safety of their life, and they're not able to get support from their family to access that care, we want to create a safe ability for them to access that care. And that means at some points providing shelter assistance through our existing shelter programs, and then also looking at the host home model as a way to get young people into safe accommodations while they seek gender affirming care. As your questions point to and the bill points to, if we can't be in touch with the parents because there is this disconnect and lack of support, we want to make sure that somebody is protecting the interests of these kids, and they are required, the shelters, host homes, all of these providers, to be in contact with DCYF to ensure the safety and well-being of these young people. At the end of the day, I look forward to a future in Washington where every single family supports their trans youth to achieve the care and success that they need. Until that day, it's up to us to make sure that there are safe places for them to learn and grow and thrive, and this bill works to create that network of loving and supportive places so that all of our people can be successful and reach the potential that we were all given at our birth. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and commend this bill to you.
Any questions for Senator Leas? Senator Leas, thanks for bringing it forward this morning.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, we are going to go back to the second panel on Senate Bill 5601, Youth Development Office, and we are moving on to our public testimony on 5599, Protected Health Care for Youth. And I just want to welcome a group of young people who I saw walked in, not sure where you're from, but happy to have you join us today. And just to give you an idea of what's happening, we just heard testimony on 3 different bills, and now we're working on our last bill. And we had staff earlier come up and brief the bill, meaning they told us about the bill. We had the sponsor of the bill in the room who came and told us why it was that he was bringing the bill forward. And he had to go back to committee, and now we're going to hear the public testimony of individuals who have signed in online, either pro, con, or other related to this bill. So with that, Vice Chair Kaufman, would you like to call our first panel, please?
Did you want this one?
I already did.
You already did that? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Our first panel, we have J. Denise Diskin and Megan Viest. I believe J. Denise is via online virtual.
Is Megan here? Oh, there you are. Okay. Megan, why don't you start while Jane Denise is turning her camera on? That would be awesome. All right. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Megan Vieth, and I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Building Changes. We are a statewide nonprofit that focuses on children, youth, and families experiencing homelessness. I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 5599. Accessing gender-affirming and reproductive health care can be challenging for any young person in Washington, but especially for a young person without stable housing. This can also be difficult for a young person who is worried that their parent or guardian may kick them out because of how they identify, or for wanting to access certain healthcare services, or for a young person outside of Washington who is fleeing here to seek safety and access to services but has nowhere to go. Senate Bill 5599 would ensure that young people are able to access shelter and host homes while they are getting crucial and oftentimes life-saving health care. In our work with host homes, we know how important they can be for young people. Host homes originally began as community response to the fact that LGBTQ+ youth are overrepresented in the homelessness population. Host homes provide safe, home-like environments with caring individuals in the community. They focus on the young person's needs and create a support network for that young person, helping them build independent living skills and empowering them in achieving their goals. They are a critical way to support young people. Please support young people accessing care and in need of a safe place to stay, be who they are, and access the care they need and want.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Jay Denise, if you would turn your camera on, and again, if you've got written testimony, please feel free to submit it, Megan. Jay Denise, good morning.
Thank you very much. Just Denise is fine. My name is Denise Diskin. I'm the Executive Director of Q Law Foundation of Washington, and we are here testifying pro for this bill. We are a legal services and legal advocacy organization for LGBTQ and Two-Spirit communities throughout Washington. The erosion of the right to access reproductive care and gender-affirming care on the federal and many states level has led to a safety crisis for transgender youth and their families. Our organization and many others is receiving really heartbreaking requests, things like, is now the time to run? Where or will I or my child be safe? Q Law Foundation specifically supports the grant making to OHY so that youth in Washington, whether they are from here or coming here, have access through community organizations to everything that they may need. We support the right of children to choose where they live and where they are safe. That's not always with their parents. And in our current cultural and social climate, where attacks on trans rights are endemic, the choice a youth makes to leave home may be a choice to survive. Finally, you may hear opposition to this bill around medical consent, and I just want to stress that this bill changes absolutely nothing about medical consent, and currently children in Washington do not have access to gender-affirming surgical care without parental or guardian consent.
Thanks, Denise. Appreciate your comments, and again, if there is more you are unable to share, please feel free to send them in. Thanks so much. Panel number 2, Vice Chair Kaufman.
Yes, we have Eric Pratt, Julie Barrett, and I'm not sure if he's in person or on remote, Margie Austin.
If you turn your cameras on and put yourself in gallery mode. Eric, good morning.
Good morning again, Chair. My name is Eric Pratt. Once again, I want to thank you for hearing me out here on Senate Bill 5599. But notice during the bill's author, I think that's the correct term, there was no mention about parents or very little wording using the term parents or parent involvement or the right of parents to know. It was strictly limited to sort of an emotional foundation of helping these children. And it's really concerning as a parent because I can imagine children running from another state to Washington with this idea that they're going to be cared for outside the parental guidance that's necessary for their own health care, that in times of crisis, the state will step in between the parents and actually allow very poor made by children without the guidance of their own parents. And it's really telling when the bill's author doesn't say anything about it. And I hope that Washington comes back to reality, and we all want to help kids. There's just nobody probably on any of these panels that don't want to help kids. But what we need to recognize is that parental involvement should be at the first and foremost top of the list when it comes to these things.
Thank you.
Unless there's due process involved to remove it, it needs to be upheld that they're the
Thanks so much for your comments. Appreciate it. Next up is Julie Barrett. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Wilson and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify before you this morning. Julie Barrett, founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington, speaking in opposition to Senate Bill 5599. 2 years ago, my daughter had to be rescued by 8 Seattle police officers from a homeless youth shelter. She was not homeless. She was in a mental health crisis, and I spent 10 days trying to gain access to my child who was in dire need of psychiatric help. The shelter staff had been working on filing a CHINS petition for my child, then 14, and had also gotten her an attorney from LCYF, all in an effort to terminate my parental rights so that I could not, quote, full consent and get her the help she needed. In fact, they rewarded her with cash when she refused to go to her own pediatrician with a family friend. The staff intentionally alienated my child from her loving family, exacerbating her trauma and unstable mental condition. This bill takes that one step further. A shelter like this would be able to give vulnerable youth like my daughter access to irreversible, gender-changing surgeries or hormones. This bill allows adults to prey on special needs children or children with trauma, mood disorders, and other mental health issues. Parents know their children better than anyone. We know their medical and mental history. Shutting out this critical relationship and doing irreversible procedures is destructive and often deadly to these children. This is an assault on our children, as this bill would allow, based on a compelling reason, which is a youth that has been convinced to get gender-affirming services, to cut parents out of the decision-making process. Minor children cannot consent to these kinds of procedures, and they can never go back and undo the damage they cause. Please do not let this bill get out of committee. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here today. I do believe that Margie Austin is not on Zoom, so we will move to the next panel. And Jarrell, you're here, so why don't you come on up while Chair Kaufman notifies the other 2 remote testifiers.
Matthew Wilson and Heather Mason.
Right. Jarrell, you may begin. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Wilson and the members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jarrell Sanders, and I am the current board chair of Equal Rights Washington. Our state has a long history of supporting and advocating for the rights of LGBTQ+ community, and Senate Bill 5599 will continue that tradition. We know that families and young people are moving to Washington to escape persecution in their home states. Harassment for doing nothing more than living openly or listening and supporting to their children. This legislation will help families and individuals access the supports they need regardless if they are dealing with the trauma of relocating to Washington or if they are, as a young person, needing a safe place and access to healthcare information. Not only will this legislation provide housing to a very vulnerable population, this bill also sets up a grant program within the Office of Homeless Youth for community organizations. Across our state, small but mighty organizations have been providing life-saving services to LGBTQ youth. They are, in fact, the ones building the community. With the expected rise in individuals accessing programs from legal advocacy to support groups, reliable funding is necessary. Many of the kids who will be needing these services have spent most of their lives fighting for the right just to exist, just to be kids. Thank you once again for standing up against hate and sending a strong message to anxious youth and their families that in Washington, they are welcome.
Thanks so much. Matthew, I see you up on the screen. Please begin.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity. Matthew Wilson, and I'm the Executive Director of Oasis Youth Center, located in Tacoma and Lakewood, Washington. Oasis has over 38 years of experience with helping thousands of LGBTQ youth. And with that experience comes clarity about why we are supporting SB 5599. LGBTQ youth need a stable, if albeit temporary, place to stay while they're making important healthcare decisions such as gender affirming and reproductive care. Now, keep in mind, this does not change the rights of youth. They already have them. It's to protect them while they exercise those rights already afforded to them. As parts of the country names and pass abhorrent legislation restricting the rights of LGBTQ people, let Washington stand as a place that expands rights and protects the freedom to live a life of one's choosing. We trust youth, and we've seen the decisions around care are never made lightly by them. This committee can also say they trust youth by passing this bill. Additionally, this bill aims to address homelessness head-on by providing funding for housing solutions. Youth deserve a safe and stable home. Please pass SB 5599. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matthew. Heather, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Heather Mason, and I lead the Sexual and Reproductive Health Program at Public Health Seattle and King County. We support Senate Bill 5599 because access to a gender-affirming and reproductive health care are essential to the mental and physical wellness of youth and young adults. Annually in King County, there are 5,000 to 10,000 youth and at-risk young adults ages 13 to 25 experiencing homelessness each year. Among these youth, at least 40% are LGBTQIA. These youth and young adults have many vulnerabilities and experience significant traumas, including high rates of sexual abuse, physical abuse, and mental health problems. This bill strengthens the rights of these youth to access protected health services, which King County strongly supports in both programs and policies. Youth rights to access protected health services are being threatened in other states across the country. So it is essential to protect and promote these rights in Washington state now. The appropriations funding would add needed financial support for programs serving youth experiencing homelessness and unstable housing and to better access protected healthcare services. We are in support of Senate Bill 5599. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, Vice Chair Coughlin, would you call the next panel up, which is all in person?
Thank you. We have Justine Kraher, Don Land, and Alexandra Krotowski.
Good morning. Awesome. Do you have an order you want to go in? Don, you want to start? Or you want to start over there?
How about we start at the other end?
All righty.
That's
Good
fine
morning.
with me.
Hello there, my name is Justine Kraher. I'm bisexual in a same-sex marriage. I voted for Democrats my entire life. I'm part of a medical watchdog organization called Gender Health Query regarding pediatric medical transition that is run by gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, but I am speaking as an individual today for myself. We are seeing an increasing amount of damage from pediatric medical transition, particularly to gay, lesbian, and bisexual youth. Transition regret seems to be increasing. I would like to raise alarm bells about pediatric transition generally. The gender-affirming care you're referring to in your bill, we now know causes osteopenia, it causes stunted genitalia, and permanent lack of sexual function. It causes sterility, and it likely impacts cognitive development because puberty is the most important developmental period in a person's life. Another reason this is a red flag, this bill. In LGBTQ++ spaces online and sometimes in real life, we know that there are examples of grooming and inappropriate behavior regarding minors. It is well known that there's a lot of sex work in gender scenes, and I can tell you there's not been a lot of safeguarding in some of these environments regarding youth. And you are removing reporting processes and vetting processes in your plans to place youth in homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Microphone. Does it matter?
Go right ahead. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Alex Krostowski. I'm a married gay woman with 3 children. I speak to you today as a concerned parent, as a Washington citizen, and as the Washington State chapter lead for Gays Against Groomers. As an organization, we are deeply concerned about the repeated attempts by the legislative body to medicalize children and limit or remove parental involvement in the medical treatment and social lives of their children. This bill gives an unprecedented agency to vulnerable children that we grant in no other circumstances, and indeed often criminalize. Children are not allowed to smoke or drink. They are not allowed to get tattoos, but we are supposed to greenlight children asking for puberty blockers hormone treatment, or body mutilating surgery. No gender affirming care is inherently safe. It is not reversible, and it transforms children into lifelong medical patients. This is not something that children can consent to. Only adults can consent to these types of procedures. SB 5599 does not provide any information for how long children may remain away from their parents or legal guardians. It does not make clear the safeguarding process of excessive state intervention, and it appears to prioritize the fast tracking of any and all gender affirming care practices over returning the child to their parents. Gender affirming care to minors should be considered child abuse, and gender affirming care for minors should not be protected. I hope this bill will not make it out of committee. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Dawn.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Land, and I am asking you to vote no on Senate Bill 5599. The reality is humans will never be able to change the sex with which they are born, but that isn't even the most important point as to why this is a bad bill. Children cannot consent to the mutilation, the poisoning, and the irreparable harm caused by trying to change the sex in which we were born. Children with gender dysphoria often have comorbid issues, such as depression, anorexia, autism, and other psychological conditions. Puberty blockers and wrong sex hormones cause a very long list.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a minute and ask you to speak to the bill. This does speak to the bill.
Okay. These puberty blockers and wrong sex hormones cause a very long list of these dangerous side effects. With any other mental health issue, the existence of comorbid issues would require the physician to treat all the issues. But for some reason, a patient believing they can change the sex they were born somehow supersedes all other health issues. It is a parent's job to protect their kids from the outside world. Our kids may want to drink alcohol, get a tattoo, have a nose job, but it's the parent's job to protect the kids from making rash decisions that will cause our kids irreparable harm. 5599 seeks to strip children of the protections of their parents. It also inappropriately lists gender-affirming care as part of protected health services. If gender is a social construct like we are always told, then it is impossible to physically affirm something that exists solely in one's imagination. Please vote no.
Thank you so much. Vice Chair Kaufman, if you call the next panel up.
Thank you. Philip Denby, Ria Delora, and Spencer Scott. I believe they're all remote. So remember, turn your cameras on. Are they here? No. Okay, they're not there. Madam Chair.
Oh, all right. Let's move to the next panel, please.
We have Oli London, Don Houghton, and Chris Bond.
Oli, is that you?
Oh, yes. Hi. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Wilson, senators and members of the committee. My name is Oli London. I'm an activist, a detransitioner and social media influencer, and I am testifying con. I believe it is so important to protect vulnerable teens as a society. We all have a moral duty. However, the protected healthcare with compelling reason clause is going to put already vulnerable children at risk. Many teens in the foster and shelter system are already vulnerable with regards to their health, whether they have autism, bipolar, or other mental health struggles. And diagnosing these kids with gender dysphoria, putting them into gender-affirming care is not a solution to a much greater problem. I believe this bill is going to loosen the restrictions, make it much more easy for these kids with no parental consent to undergo hormone therapy, puberty blockers, gender-affirming care, which can have long-term health consequences, both physically and mentally. And I don't believe this is the right solution for teens. If an adult wants to consent to doing a procedure, that's on them, but children cannot consent to gender-affirming care. So I please urge you all to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next panel, please, Vice Chair Kaufman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to call up Dorothy Frenzel, Carrie Becerra, and Paige Norman.
We did have two others signed in on the last panel that were not in the ether, so we're not able to bring them forward. So if you would turn your cameras on after you are promoted. No one there. No one there. All right, how about we move to panel 8?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Panel 8 is Mark Kostick, Jack Blotsky, and Randy Berry.
All right, we're going to move to panel 9.
Okay, panel 9, Kathleen Nemke, Janelle Holst, and Angela Fry. If you could turn your cameras on.
None of them.
Are we having
Okay.
internet problems again?
All right. We got in person. We hopefully know you're here. Next up is panel number 10.
Panel number 10, Mark Nance, Sarah Garriott, and Linda Ader. There you go.
Good morning. Okay. Okay, so I got 4 people, but only 3 names. So who did we not?
Joshua Hardwick.
Okay. Oh, Joshua, you are up in the next. You're in the next. Is it okay? Are you with them in a group, or because you're in our next panel? Okay. Okay. You're fine. Go ahead and join the group then. All right, Lori, you want to begin? Who's?
Want me to begin? Yep. Yeah, I'll begin if that's all right.
Okay. Joshua.
All right. Joshua Hardwick, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I believe the children are our future. Whitney Houston, 1985. SB 5599 expands on SB 5489 to give shelters covering for harboring minors without parental permission if they have a compelling reason that matches protected health care service. In SB 5489, we find the new term protected health care services in subsection 3 of section 2. That bill means gender-affirming treatment and reproductive health care services that are lawful in the state of Washington. Reproductive health care is abortion. Gender-affirming treatment is abortion 2.0. Under SB 5599, a minor is able to disappear from their legal guardian if they are able to come up with a compelling reason. Compelling reasons are either if notifying the parent would subject the minor to abuse, or the minor is seeking or receiving protected health care services. A minor who is the sole responsibility of a parent by nature, who has no indication of a troubled home or utters the magic words of protected health care, will disappear from the radar of their parent or guardian. There is no safety net for the grieving parent. This bill legalizes the kidnapping of minors, and coupled with SB 5489, will make Washington State a black hole for minors. It segregates us from the union and destroys the future of our children. Please vote no.
Thank you so much. And Lori Lane?
No, Sarah Garriott.
Okay, Sarah. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. You may begin.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sarah Garriott, and I am here to ask you to reject Senate Bill 5599, do not pass. I believe parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's lives. I personally know a minor child in Washington State who was coerced to leave their loving family without their parents' knowledge and move in with a volunteer teacher who assumed and declared that the children's Christian parents would not support the child's decision to change their gender. The volunteer teacher told the child that they did care about this child's gender choices and would support them. This teacher did not know that this child had a previous clinical diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Subsequently, the child left their home against their parents' wishes, and during that time, the child did not have access to critical medication, which put the child in real danger. Other adults simply do not have all the information and medical background that parents do. As a mother, a concerned mother, I watched in 2020 as Washington state legislators in the House vetoed the amendment to 5395 that would have allowed minor youth to opt themselves out of sexuality education without a parent's signature. Those opposing the amendment stated that minors' brains aren't developed enough or mature enough for those kinds of decisions, like opting our children out of sex ed class on their own, and the amendment failed. It follows that minor children are not mature enough to make this decision. Parents are a necessary and critical part of their children's lives, and at no time should other well-meaning adults come between the natural bond of a child and their parent. I am asking you to please vote no on 599.
Thanks so much. All right.
Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee, thank you very much. My name is Mark Nance. I'm a native Washington resident, volunteer with homeless, human trafficking, and public schools. My concern with this bill, 5589, is that it tosses the baby out with the bathwater. It references Senate Bill 5489, protected health services around gender-affirming care. This bill does not provide guardrails for the safety and well-being of children that are living in caring homes. We've heard at least multiple instances of that actually happening today in our state. It exploits children who are disadvantaged, who can be coerced and manipulated. The gender affirming care is providing permanent, life-altering changes that we've heard earlier today from other speakers that cannot be reversed. I'm urging you to vote no on 5589. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Linda Ader. I'm testifying in opposition of Senate Bill 5599. I truly believe that we all want, of course, what's best for the children. We all want to give vulnerable children that are confused every opportunity to resolve their mental health issues, if that's what it is, or support and good care and safe environments. I think maybe we see differently, though, what constitutes healthy care. I don't think that children can consent to these life-altering, permanent changes to their bodies, and that parents should be the primary stakeholders in protecting the children and understanding the children, being the person the children turn to in those times of need to help the child navigate emotionally what these feelings are that they're having. It's very common for adolescents to be confused about their gender and their sexual orientation as they're prepubescent and they go through puberty, and oftentimes these resolve of their own accord. Certainly did for me. And I would have considered it child abuse if had somebody kept me from my loving family when I was a questioning young woman and when I was much younger. So I ask for you to vote against this, and the jury's still out on what happens with these kids down the road, right? This is all brand new technologies. These are brand new medical procedures, and we don't have a long history of how these children navigate adulthood down the road. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, thanks so much for being here. Vice Chair Kaufman, the next panel, please.
Yes, we actually do have the next two panels up on Zoom. So Lori Lane, Leah Anaya, and Amy Sousa.
If you would turn your cameras on.
Okay.
When you're promoted, then we can see you. I see, is that Lori or is that Amy? Amy, I see you. Why don't you turn off your mute and let's start with you. You may begin.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, my name is Amy Sousa and I oppose Bill 5599. I hold a master's degree in psychology, and myself and many other mental health experts disagree with current recommendations being given right now to sex stereotype non-conforming kids that bypass parental inclusion in care. I oppose this bill on the basis that parents have a right to know where their children are, the right to determine what medical procedures are right for their child, and because children cannot consent to irreversible medical interventions, nor should kids be placed in situations where they're being housed in quarters with the opposite sex without parental consent. Sex-based safeguarding, including sex-based housing, remains relevant in keeping kids safe from sex-based crimes. I also cite to you today SAGE's law, or the Child Protection Act, being introduced in Virginia in honor of a teen whose location was concealed from her parents because of her stated identity, which set in motion a series of events that led to her being sex trafficked twice. SAGE's law addresses clear points of failure that led to her ordeal when institutions designated to protect her by not notifying parents of her location, further endangering her and leaving her in vulnerable situations instead. Parents know and understand a child's mental health history, comorbidities, and have a right to know about their child's location. Thank you for voting no on this bill.
Thanks so much for being here today. Lori, you are next. Good morning. Oh, I guess it's good afternoon.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh,
you may begin.
Okay. Hi, Chair, and committee members. My name is Laurie Lane. I'm from Buckley, Washington, and I'm against this bill too, because the parents that are the most important building block are removed from this situation, which is the worst mistake that could be made for the well-being of these children. They don't need to be put in such a terrible situation to make such critical decisions. And the sad thing about these kind of things is that the results can't be undone from gender assignment surgeries and hormone gender identification hormone therapy either. This stuff can't be that it rarely can be undone. And the consequences are people across the board have regretted these kind of decisions that they made as youth. That's why I'm against this bill. It takes out the parents, which is so critical. And at a time when these youth need them the most. I encourage this to not be passed out of committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And next up, Leah, are you there? Because we cannot see you.
I'm so sorry. My camera's not working.
All righty, we hear you.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so I'm speaking as the Washington State Liaison for Washington Moms for America on behalf of thousands of parents. I'm asking you not to advance this bill. The most disturbing portion of the bill is the fact that there's no minimum age included. The bill is representative of the most recent agenda being pushed forward, attacking the rights of parents as well as attempting to strip the innocence away from our children at a very early age. At no time in a child's life should the government pass a law allowing their children to make life-altering decisions without parental involvement or even knowledge. A child making a life-altering decision like reproductive health care services and gender-affirming treatment, or more simply put, abortion and sex changes, is not a compelling reason to leave parents out of the decision-making process, as the bill states. The senator previously mentioned the Trevor Project study found that there are approximately 30,000 youth in Washington state who identify as transgender, but that study does not follow the children throughout their lives, and there's no way to know whether all those children will feel that way for their whole lives. This so-called gender-affirming care is dangerous and irreversible in many circumstances and should only be made by a well-informed adult. Parents do not want this type of thing in Washington state, and I'm asking you today, please kill this bill immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have, is Andy Silly here? Or, and then Teresa Shrimp is virtual.
I think they were both on virtual. We were ready to go.
All right, so Andy is not here in person. The other three we could call up are Don Seaver, Aaron Brewer, and Sharon Slatter. Hi, Andy. Good afternoon.
Hello.
You may begin.
You ready for me?
Yes,
okay.
I am.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Andy Silly. I'm speaking on behalf of Lakewood Cares. Senate Bill 5599 requires entities harboring children to report them to their parents or other authorities gender-affirming treatment, including such medical interventions as hormone therapy, genital reconstruction, breast reconstruction, and facial plastic surgery. Parents are the primary stakeholders in the health and welfare of their children. Senate Bill 5599 presupposes the authority and wherewithal of third parties to determine objectively whether there are compelling reasons for such interventions. It thus violates fundamental rights of parents. Children are rushed into gender-affirming medical interventions with health repercussions as yet little understood by clinicians, and we don't even know whether such interventions solve the problem of gender dysphoria. Children regrets due to unintended consequences such as irreversible fertility loss, a condition which contributes to social and emotional disorders and often leads to suicidal ideation. Such risks are unacceptable and should not be encouraged by the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Teresa, I think you've been promoted. If you want to accept your promotion and turn your camera
Yes.
on, then we can hear from you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh,
good
good, thank you.
afternoon.
Good
You're
afternoon
up.
to all of you. My name is Teresa Shrimp. I'm a retired attorney from Seattle, and I strongly oppose this measure. This bill, when with 5489, would not only allow children to be surgically mutilated and pharmaceutically maimed to accomplish a perceived need for gender affirmation. The bill also provides that parents and guardians be shut out from these decisions about their precious child. Even worse, the bill would make medical providers unaccountable and legally untouchable for their actions. The final insult in this bill set forth in 5489 is that anyone who attempts legal action is subject to financial sanction. No wonder the companion bill 5489 is called the SHIELD law, not because it shields children, because it shields healthcare providers from these procedures. And it is profitable. Dr. Shane Taylor of Vanderbilt University Medical Center explained that gender change surgeries, quote, are huge moneymakers, unquote, which could support an entire clinic. Routine hormone treatment, she noted, can bring in thousands of dollars. We have a long tradition of protecting children from activities which do harm. Why? Because children are generally less able than adults to exercise good judgment when making decisions. Invasive gender changes render an individual infertile, risks lifelong sexual dysfunction.
Thank you so much. If you want to send your comments this direction, we would be happy to share them with the rest of the committee members. Thank you so much, Teresa. Next up, we have panel remote, Don Seaver, Aaron Brewer, and Sharon Slatter. And if you want to turn your cameras on. And while they're coming forward, Vice Chair Kaufman, who's panel number 15?
15 is Lisa Olson, Joy Bird, and Brad Payne.
All right.
And if we could remind...
Aaron, is that you? Good afternoon. Why don't you begin?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. I am a former transgender kid. As a child, I was insistent, persistent, and consistent that I was a boy. I have no doubt that if the option to take puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones had been available, I would have jumped at the opportunity to take them, even if it meant running away from home and lying about my safety. In the short term, I might have felt better having medically transitioned. Testosterone is a controlled substance. Like any other substance, it has high risk to health and well-being and has the potential for both addiction and abuse. Testosterone makes almost anyone who takes it initially feel a sense of euphoria. When I first started medically transitioned, it would have boosted my confidence and increased my energy. Most importantly, I would have felt safer, as it would have been so much easier for me to pretend that I was not the little girl who was brutally sexually assaulted, a little girl who became convinced at the moment of the assault that I was not safe being a girl, and that the only way I could keep it from happening again was to become a boy. Despite feeling better in the short term, medical transition would have profoundly damaged me, potentially even more than the sexual assault. Despite feeling better in the short term, it would have reinforced all the mistaken beliefs that I had that caused me to develop my gender dysphoria in the first place. That being a girl was bad, that it was my fault that those men hurt me, that my body was a mistake, and that it was too dangerous to be a girl. If I had been medically transitioned, I wouldn't have got the help I needed to work through my self-hatred and shame. I never would have realized that my transgender identity was a coping mechanism. Please vote against 5599 and help to protect these vulnerable children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, I see Dawn.
Yes, good morning, or good afternoon, I guess now. A little over a year ago, Dr. Marcy Bowers, who was a trans-identified man and who performed the gender reassignment surgery on trans-identified reality star Jazz Jennings, gave an interview questioning the rush to affirm children suffering from gender dysphoria. He said he didn't know if puberty blockers were reversible. He expressed concern about their reproductive ability, their sexual health, and the ability to find intimacy. He said if you've never had an orgasm pre-surgery and then your puberty's blocked, it's very difficult to achieve that afterwards. In 2008, a survey of 70,000 American female college students found that 1 in 2,000 identified as transgender. In 2021, that number was 1 in 20. And at the same time, the number of gender clinics here rose from 1 to today where there's hundreds now. And this is not organic. We can't claim that. Dr. Bowers even acknowledged that some of these kids are probably being influenced and want to join in because it's considered being cool. And the push to medically transition children is happening even when we know that 80 to 95% of these children will identify with their biological sex before adulthood if they're simply allowed to go through puberty. Children are vulnerable. They don't have the ability to give informed consent for such life-altering treatments, and the state has no right to facilitate it. And to do so without the consent of parents and with taxpayer money? No. This is overreach. It's wrong on all levels, and SB 5599 should be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sharon, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am grateful for this opportunity to testify against this bill, which we could not oppose more strongly. I am the president of Global Helping to Advance Women and Children, a nonprofit in consultative status with the United Nations, and also the co-chair of the Protect Child Health Coalition, which has members and leaders throughout the United States. And we have thousands of members throughout the state of Washington. This bill, while well-meaning, is totally misguided. I am the co-producer of a number of documentaries on transgender issues, including Understanding Transgender Issues, and about 30 other videos dealing with cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers, and surgical interventions for trans-identifying persons. Through the process of interviewing multiple experts, medical doctors, mental health professionals, persons who have struggled with gender dysphoria, it is my strongest opinion that this bill constitutes allowing the state to sexually and physically and medically abuse children. Children who go under the surgical procedures that this bill would allow for and fund, as has been stated, will be rendered infertile for life. I've said that 3 times, infertile for life, and lose their sexual functioning. Please,
thank you so much.
Pass this bill.
All right, thanks so much. Next up is panel 15. We have 2 individuals remotely.
Okay.
Lisa Olson and Brad Payne. And then we could also be looking for Victoria Furrer. If you could turn your cameras on and be in gallery mode. Lisa, I see you.
Yes. Hi.
Good afternoon. You may begin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I oppose the bill 5599. Transition regret is wide and long. Testimonies are accessible for your viewing. Minors need parental consent to get a tattoo these days. Please make me understand how a child is ready to make a permanent change to their body, because a tattoo is way smaller than what this bill is trying to grant to children. Children change their minds often, and just like that of a fad, things come and go. Let's please let them grow and work on their emotions and possibly changing their minds without a permanent surgery. Children's brains are not fully developed until after adulthood, so they're vulnerable and they really need parental guidance. Please help prevent these irreversible things that could happen if the parents are removed from guidance. Support parents' guidance, strengthen the home unit, work on adoption, better foster programs, and behavioral health programs for minors before considering this bill. Please save the children, reject 5599. Thank you so much.
For the record, could you just identify your name by name?
Oh, my name is Lisa Olson, University Place, Washington. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next up, Brad. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Brad Payne. I'm with the Family Policy Institute of Washington, and I'm the policy director there. And I would guess that most of you on the committee and many of those that have been on this morning and this afternoon are from an age where back when my kids were young, whether or not my daughter could pierce her ears. Now we're facing allowing our kids to be able to undergo these kind of transgender procedures that have been said by many others that have lifelong impacts. And it's hard to believe that we even have to line up to testify on this behalf. I find it just disgusting that any legislature would take it upon themselves to think that they understand what's best for our children. And it's not lost on me this morning that the majority of the parents that are testifying this morning are against this bill, those that seem to be consider themselves advocates for children. But we understand that, as many others have said, the best advocates for children are the parents themselves. So I'm very strongly opposed to this bill, as are all the members of the Family Policy Institute, and we ask you to keep this from ever coming out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last testifier of today's hearing is Bonnie Ruiz, who is remote. So if you want to turn your camera on when you're promoted. Good afternoon, Bonnie. You are wrapping us up this afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, my name is Bonnie Ruiz and I'm with Moms for America. Please do not advance this bill. It is dangerous and the language is deceptive. Parents are their children's greatest advocate and know what is best for them. It is disturbing to even consider children at any age to receive reproductive health care services and gender affirming treatment at all, much less without parental notification. This is a life-altering treatment and is impossible to reverse. Not to mention the government has proven time and again they should not be getting involved in personal medical decisions. Children are not equipped to make this decision. Last month, my 6-year-old thought she was a cat, and this month she wants to be a dog. And next month is going to be something different. In fact, studies show 60 to 90% of children who transition regret it as adults. Also, the language regarding protective healthcare service is confusing and not well defined. It appears this is intentional. I implore you to kill this dangerous bill, support parents' rights, and allow our children to be children.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That ends testimony. I just want to make sure and just note and clarify, we've heard a lot of testimony and a lot of emotion, and I'm appreciative of everything we've heard today. And Senator Wynn.
Yeah, as we wrap up, I just want to bring this back to what the bill actually does and who we're trying to support right now as well. In a recent report, 82% of trans youth have expressed suicidal tendencies. 40% have actually tried to commit suicide. So I see you rolling your eyes, and I appreciate you coming and giving feedback to our testimony today. But we are here to support our kids. We are here to support their needs as well. So for the testimony regarding that this is about control and about your parents knowing the best. Hey, I have 3 kids as one, I get it, right? So I understand that we want to do what's best for our youth, but we are seeing our kids die now. Suicide is happening now, and we need to provide the resources to serve their needs as well. So thank you so much for coming to testify today. That is the rationale for why we're doing this. What this does is provides a shelter for runaways and homeless youth. Right, we're not talking about the other things that you're referring to as well. So I'm just bringing it back to why we're having this bill is to help our young people navigate a very complex situation in their lives.
I appreciate those comments, and I also wanted to say that nothing in this bill impacts parental consent to receive services. The policy in this bill is dealing whether a youth shelter has to notify a parent of their minor child is staying there, not whether they can receive services at a hospital or other medical setting. It's important to note that youth shelters are not medical centers. and they do not provide those services. So it does not change existing Washington law on parental consent for reproductive or gender-affirming care services. It does not suspend mandatory reporting requirements when abuse or neglect is suspended or suspected. I just wanted to make sure, as well as with Senator Wynn, that we're focused on what this bill does. And there's a lot of emotion around young people and around gender identity and around all those things, but really focusing on the purpose of this bill today. And with that, I will close this hearing and thank everyone who came today, both in person and virtually, to testify. Senate Bill 5.